Hey guys, it's Miss Fiella. I just want to go over some things for your quiz for today. So today you're taking the FSA quiz 4. Some things that we did in this topic were customary units, metric units, equivalent fractions, comparing fractions, and adding fractions with denominators of 10 and 100. Okay, so let's start off by going over some of your fractions. Okay, so there's a couple questions on your quiz that have to do with equivalent fractions. For example, if you were given a picture like this and 3 parts were shaded. First of all, we should know how to write that fraction. So how many total parts do you have? 4, that's your denominator. And how many total parts are shaded or colored in? 3. My fraction is 3/4. So now we have to find an equivalent fraction to 3/4. You can use your picture to help you, or you can use one of our other 2 ways that we found equivalent fractions, which was either multiplying or dividing. So remember when I said to divide to find an equivalent fraction, the numerator and the denominator have to share a common factor. Do 3 and 4 share a common factor? Well, if I list the factors of 3 and I list the factors of 4, I see that they do not share any factors. The only factors of 3 are 1 and 3. So they do not share a factor other than 1, so I cannot divide, so I need to multiply. Remember, when you multiply, you're multiplying the top and the bottom by the same number, by 1 whole. So 3 times 2 is 6, and 4 times 2 is 8. That is an equivalent fraction. That might not be an answer choice on your quiz. What if you multiplied by 3/3? That would give you 9/12. That is also an equivalent fraction. That could be your answer choice. Okay, so remember, we can multiply to find an equivalent fraction. Okay, and you can multiply by any number as long as the top number and the bottom number are the same. I could take 3/4 and multiply it by 6/6. And that is still going to give me an equivalent fraction. Okay? There is a question on your quiz where you have to find an equivalent fraction, but you're not going to use multiplication, you're going to use division. For example, if you have something like 8/12 and you need to find an equivalent fraction. Now, a lot of you want to just multiply. So you're just going to multiply by 2/2 and get 16/24. But you're going to notice that's not an answer choice. So instead of multiplying, try to divide. Well, what could I divide by? You need to list the factors of the numerator and the denominator. So I'm going to make my chart 1 through 9 to find all my factors of each one of these numbers. Okay? 1 times 8 gives me 8. 2 times 4 gives me 8. Is there anything else that multiplies together to give me 8? No. Okay? Now let's list the factors of 12. 1 times 12, 2 times 6, 3 times 4. Is there anything else that multiplies together to give you 12? No. So now look here. What factors do they share? They share a factor of 2, and they share a factor of 4. So for this one, I'm going to do both to see what my equivalent fractions could be. So if I divide by 2/2, I get 4/6. That could be an answer choice. Or you could try to divide by 4 because they also share a factor of 4. So if I divide by 4/4, I get 2/3. And that is an equivalent fraction. So that might be your answer choice. Okay? So you try to divide. See if they share a common factor. Make your lists. Okay? And you might even have a question on your quiz that has 12 as your denominator. And I am doing this list of factors right here for you. Okay? So remember your factors of 12. Make your list. Make your chart. That is how we find our equivalent fractions. We can multiply or we can divide. Okay, don't forget about the dividing. Alrighty, we also compared fractions. So if you were asked a question like, is 3/7 greater than or less than or equal to 4/7? I am comparing 3/5 compared to 4/7. This is how I'm going to compare my fractions. Now remember, any question, if it is worded with greater than, less than, or equal to, that means you're comparing, okay? Now remember, our trick for comparing our fractions, we can use that butterfly method, the cross multiplication. So I'm going to do 4 times 5, which gives me 20. And then I'm going to do 3 times 7, which gives me 21. So what's greater, 21 or 20? 21 is greater, so 3/5 is greater than 4/7. Okay? And you have two questions where you have to compare fractions. One asks you a question maybe, which statement is true? And you might be given something like this. Okay? Maybe it says, something like this. So here's an example, and now let's do okay, so now I have to figure out which one of these is true. If you're given answer choices like this, you need to use the butterfly method for each one of your answer choices to see which one is true. We are not going to guess. So I'm going to use my butterfly method. 3 times 4 gave me 12, and 1 times 5 gave me 5. Now, this is pointing greater than over here. Is 5 greater than 12? No. So that is not true. My symbol should have looked like this for that one. Now let's do the next one. I'm going to use my butterfly method. 3 times 4 is 12, and 2 times 7 is 14. Are 14 and 12 equal to each other? No. The correct symbol should have been this for this one. 2/4 is greater than 3/7. Now let's do my last one, butterfly method. 4 times 5 is 20. 1 times 6 is 6. Is 20 greater than 6? It is, and the big side, the opening, is pointing to the greater one, so that one is true. Okay? Do you see I did these for all of my answer choices to see which one was true? That is what you need to do for your quiz question. Okay? We also added fractions with denominators of 10 and 100. Now, for addition, you need to remember some keywords. What are some keywords for adding? Well, if you're adding, you're finding the sum. We're finding the total of something. All together is a keyword. Let's see another keyword for addition. A tricky one that we talked about is that word and. Okay, that also means to add. If I completed 17 pages in my book on Monday and 23 pages in my book on Tuesday, how many pages did I read? Well, that keyword and meant I'm going to add, okay? So remember these keywords for addition when you're solving your problems. So if we're adding fractions with denominators of 10 and 100, remember, we cannot add our fractions like this. They do not have the same denominator. We need to make them have the same denominator. So what we did was we found an equivalent fraction. So what can I multiply 10 by to get a denominator of 100? It was 10. And whatever you do to the bottom, you do to the top. So 6 times 10 is 60. 10 times 10 is 100. Now I'm adding 60 hundredths plus 33 hundredths. And that gives me 93 hundredths. Okay? Remember, when you're adding those fractions with denominators of 10 and 100, you have to make them have the same denominator. Okay? And remember, if you had a larger number on top, like 146 over 100, that's an improper fraction. We change it to a mixed number. And I showed you that trick. The first digit is your whole number. What are the other two digits here? 46. That's your numerator out of 100. Okay? So remember those adding with denominators of 10 and 100. Okay, we also converted customary units and metric units, which have the same steps. So for example, customary units of length. So let's talk about length. Okay, so customer units of length, we had feet, inches, yards, miles. And you have a reference sheet that you can use for your quiz, okay? So, for example, if I had 6 feet of fabric, and I want to know how many inches of fabric do I have? Well, I have to change my feet to inches. Remember the first step, write down what you already know. I know 1 foot is equal to how many inches? 12. Now to figure out how many inches are in 6 feet, I need to multiply 12 times 6 to give me my answer of 72 inches. Okay? So another example of converting customary units. We had customary units of capacity, so that's volume. So for example, if I was making a punch and I had 7 pints and I wanted to know how many cups do I have. Okay, I had 7 pints of my punch. I want to know how many cups of punch do I have. Well, I have to convert my pints to cups. So the first step is to write down what you already know. What do you know about 1 pint? Just 1 pint is how many cups. And if you use your reference sheet, it tells you 1 pint equals 2 cups. So now how do I figure out how many cups are in 7 pints? I'm going to multiply. 7 times 2 equals 14 cups. So 7 pints equals 14 cups. Okay? Same if you were going from cups to fluid ounces. Okay? You're going to do the same thing. You're going to write down what you already know. You already know 1 cup is equal to how many fluid ounces. And then you are going to multiply. Okay? And it is 8 fluid ounces. So 8 we would do times 3, which is 24 fluid ounces. Okay? Same thing with our metric units. Our metric units are our meters, kilometers, liters, milliliters, centimeters, okay? Those were our metric units. So for example, if we were going to do the same thing, if we were going to convert, let me just pull up your reference sheet. 1 second. I want to get your question. And I want to show this to you too when we're done. Okay, so say we were going from 6 kilometers. And I want to know how many meters that equals. It's the same steps. The first step, we're going to write down what we already know. I know 1 kilometer is equal to 1,000 meters. So how do I figure out how many meters are in 6 kilometers? I'm going to do 1,000 times 6, which is 6,000 is your answer. Okay? Some other examples that we had, I'm just pulling it up for you. We could go from meters to centimeters. If I have 5 meters and I want to know how many centimeters that equals. Well, I have to write what I already know. And then not all of them are 1,000. So 1 meter is actually only equal to 100 centimeters. So for this one, I'm going to do 100 times 5, which equals 500 centimeters, okay? But you can use your reference sheet. It has all of that information right on there for you, okay? And that was converting our customary units and our metric units. You also had metric units of, we just talked about length, we talked about the capacity, which is liters, milliliters, and we had weight, which is grams and kilograms, okay? And that's all on your reference sheet. I think that covers about all of your questions on your quiz. If you have any other questions after you watch this video, just message me on Edmodo and we can talk about it before you take your quiz. Okay? Thank you. Good luck.